Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers, sisters and friends. Just exactly how long has it been since we've sat down together on this wonderful show, Deen Matters? It's been ages. I know you've been seeing the show on a regular basis, but I've been itching to get back here to sit down with you and to focus on some of the most crucial topics and agendas and issues that we need to deal with in our Muslim community. Brothers and sisters, subhanAllah, it may have been a little while, but things have been ticking away all the time. And as always, we've come up with a very, very crucial topic, something which I know you're going to get involved with. Telephone lines are going to be open in a short while. Please, let's get things moving again. It's been a while, but you know exactly what to do. So first of all, let's talk about the topic today. We're going to be talking about charity, the Muslim mindset. Now, when you hear that title, straight away you're thinking, okay, yes, Muslim mindset, we always do charity, that's what we do. We're actually known, in the UK, we're known to be the biggest givers of charity. And that's a wonderful accolade that we can say, yes, the Muslim Ummah, when it comes to charity, we always give. But there's a little bit of an issue though. And what that issue is when you think about the way that we are as a Muslim community, and actually, let's go back, let's think previously, the time of the Rasul ﷺ and his prior predecessors. These wonderful people from that Ummah, let's talk about Umar radiallahu anhu. What did he do? Umar, before he would go to sleep at night, you all know this story, he would go door to door and he would knock and make sure that every single person in that community had eaten, because he knew that he had that accountability if he was sleeping on a full stomach and somebody in that neighborhood had gone to bed starving and hungry. Now, you know, brothers and sisters, that the Muslim Ummah, we are not alone in our community. We have non-Muslims with us. So tell me something, simple question. Did Umar radiallahu anhu miss a couple of doors? Oh yeah, these are Muslims. Have you eaten? Oh, this one's not Muslim. Next one, Muslim. Have you eaten? Do you think he did that? No, I know you know that in no way did that happen. Accountability is on us all, brothers and sisters, when it comes to our neighborhood. So we're talking about the Muslim mindset. There are a couple of questions I want to ask you, and what that is how is it that when we hear about the plight of maybe other charities within our sector who actually come to us sometimes and ask us for help, how is it that you, brothers and sisters at home, you don't seem to be very interested? Now, you might be thinking, Jamal, that's a bit of a harsh statement to make against us. But I'm going to give you a couple of facts and statistics later on, and we'll be able to see that, you know, something isn't quite right. And there is a possibility, brothers and sisters, that we may be sitting in front of Allah on Yawm al-Qiyamah and being asked about things that we did not realize we were going to be asked. Now, today I have a couple of wonderful brothers joining me. And they are actually members of Deen Riders. And if you don't know who Deen Riders are, don't worry, I'll sit down for another 2 hours and tell you all about Deen Riders, no problem. But actually, I have two wonderful brothers. So to my right, I've got brother Jahanzab Rahman.
Assalamu
And next to him, I've got brother Omar Khan. MashaAllah, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. So these brothers, mashallah, they're here as members of Deen Riders, but also in the capacity, in their spare time, that isn't that funny, in their spare time, Omar is a school teacher at Al Khair, actually, mashallah. And Jahanzab is a project manager. So we're going to have some questions, maybe even related to your field, sure, inshallah. But let's introduce everyone, let's let them know a little bit about yourself, inshallah. So Jahanzab.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm an IT project manager, so I think every Asian's an IT project manager or involved in IT in some shape or form. I'm actually new in the Deen Riders, only been around for about a year or so, but it's a phenomenal way to marry our interest in terms of riding and being on the bikes with something which is going to further Allah's cause. Apart from Deen Riders, I don't do very much else.
MashaAllah. Would you say, before Deen Riders, would you say that you were kind of still active in doing charity work, or do you find it's more now?
Not as much, not as much. I mean, I would do the standard, which most Muslims do, which is give to orphans, etc., etc., through various standing orders and all this kind of stuff, which, you know, low effort type tasks. But mashallah, with the Deen Riders, what's happened is that because we are focused in moving towards something which is more than just ourselves, it's more of an intention and more of an active intention to do stuff. And you know, the charity work has increased, mashallah. Yeah, and it has been because I've joined the group.
Mashallah. What about you, Ammar? So you're a teacher at Al Khair, and I know the audience is very familiar with Al Khair School. So tell us, first of all, what's that like? What are the children like here?
The children at Al Khair School?
Yeah.
Mashallah, wonderful. They're really, really good to spend time with. You have all types of children, as you would do in the institution, but there's an innate good in them, and they're fun to work with, and it makes my job extra special in that way, because you go in, you're not quite sure what to expect, but what you can expect is the love from your students, and you just give that back as a brother.
Oh, that's beautiful. You must be nice to see like the children like maybe a few years later, and they'll come back to you and maybe like, you know, upright citizens in the.
Absolutely, yeah. It's nice to see them come back. They do come back, and what they always say is that Al Khair was a place where they felt safe, they were comfortable, and whether they realised it at the time, they actually enjoyed a lot of the time that they spent there. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff you get back, I think.
Inshallah. So we're gonna come back to that and ask you some more questions regarding the children and obviously just people generally in our community here. So actually, before we move on, I'm just gonna reflect on a little bit of another issue, which is regarding. Okay, we'll talk about charity. That's our main topic here. Now, I suppose the small issue that I've got is that, as I said before, when it comes to non-Muslim charities, and especially when they approach us as Muslims and say like, can you help us with this? It's an amazing opportunity for us to show that we are all part of the same community, and also that with Muslims we like to be, I don't know, we'd like to take charge if possible in these kind of areas. But unfortunately, the responses are not too great. I mean, why do you think that is?
I think as Muslims we're going through a unique period in our lives. There is a lot of challenges which we as the Ummah face, and everyone knows about Syria and Palestine, etc., etc. And that tends to polarize Muslims. It tends to put us in a specific camp where we just focus on ourselves, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. But from that perspective, it becomes very hard to look at the wider view. The fact is that many people have come to Islam just through the actions of the Sahaba, the way that they used to trade with each other, etc., etc. So it is difficult, but it's something which it's part of our fard. Our fard is to spread the deen and to bring others to the deen and to help other people, inshallah.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. Obviously, when we talk about Syria, when we did a fundraiser, I believe it may have been the Great Ormond Street one, and on Twitter we actually did get a sister saying, to us, well, not realizing that our very next campaign was going to be for Syria, which was an amazing, had amazing results. But she said, oh, shouldn't you be focusing on the Syria situation? And, even at that point, it kind of brought it home to me that maybe sometimes, there is no comparison. In Syria, what's going on is really, really serious. But at the same time, we know that our neighbors are still going through stuff which we still need to be able to help with. So that was quite interesting. But just going back, I mean, you were both involved with the Ride Aid for Great Ormond Street. Yeah. What was that like trying to get sponsorship? Omar, you were there as well, weren't you, in that one?
I missed one. I think I missed that one.
On that one. But again, as being someone in Deen Riders who was encouraged to try to get support from the community, did you ever come against any obstacles there?
Yeah, I mean, especially with this one, it's called Ride to Cornwall. The way that I see it is that finances are limited. Where do you give your money? Ramadan's coming up, etc., etc., and you got to make a decision. And it's very easy to sort of say, well, my heart is attached to this area, this piece of land, this type of people. It's easier for you to spend on certain causes than it is on others. I think what we need to sit back and reflect. What did Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam teach us? How did Umar bin Khattab, under his rule, how was charity spread across the land with regards to the people that lived under it? And remember, the land contained Muslims and non-Muslims. And I think maybe we need to draw that information out and sort of get people to realise that, hang on, when we give charity, we're not giving charity to save someone's life. That's from Allah. We give charity because we want to extinguish the hellfire. We want to be saved from the hellfire. So it's why we're doing it, not the end result. And I think people are getting confused, saying, well, I want to help. Okay? That's Allah's duty. We just give, because you never know. In Syria, you can give £1 million. Lorry goes with lots of food, etc., etc. It gets destroyed. And you know, the food doesn't, but you spent £1 million. Do you lose out on that reward? No, you don't. It's still there. You know, it's just because Allah determined it so. So the way I believe the approach is that you give, and that's it. Because Allah told you to give, and I want to save my soul. That's why I want to give. And I just want to raise a couple of examples on this, because I did find, you know, it is very difficult to try and raise for non-Muslim charities. Under bin Khattab, when, you know, he saw there were some lepers, some Christian lepers. These are not Muslims, and this is like a very strong Muslim state, very prosperous Muslim state, and alhamdulillah, he spent money on the lepers, so to treat them, and those that cannot be treated, that were terminally ill, he gave them money to make them comfortable before the ultimate end. And so, you know, this is someone who feared Allah. This is someone who lived with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So from these people, we can sort of look at this.
Beautiful. That is amazing, because again, I mean, I think the main message for today that I'm trying to put across is that we are not trying to encourage people to say, okay, well, let's not spend our money here and let's just spend it here instead. But it's wherever the need is, I think our mindset has to be the right one, you know, because as you just mentioned, Omar Rajan, he could have just like said, well, okay, well, they're dying anyway, and you know, I'm sure this money could be needed, you know, used somewhere else. Absolutely. But it's that's a wonderful example. Staying with you for a minute, Omar, as a school teacher, you know, obviously you're teaching the children, you're nurturing them to do good in the community, because it's an Islamic school as well, so there's that responsibility, mashallah. But at what age do children start to realise the importance of charity and giving back to the community?
That's a good question. If you look at the human being, just to take it back to basics, there's an innate sort of feeling to give, to see that your own sort of like race or mankind prosper in that sense. And you look at kids, and when another kid is crying, they may give something, or they'll see, you know, what's wrong. We've seen this as parents, right? Sure, yeah. Okay. It's then down to the parents, the household, the institution you're going up to encourage that. So when they actually realise when they need to give back, I couldn't tell you, but certainly, you know, that innate feeling needs to be reinforced from the household and institution.
That's quite interesting, because where you said that as well, it's like being innate, it means that naturally they will give.
Yes.
Then there comes a point when they decide to keep it back for themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, so
it's down to, I think that's down to nafs, isn't it, really? I mean, it's like, for example, if you've got £100, what can you do with £100? Well, I can buy X, Y, Z, etc., etc. And you know, and all we're doing is accumulating dunya. Yeah, we're accumulating things of this life, and we're not remembering the next life. So people are different. Some people remember the akhirah more than others, you know, and there might be people who have the ability to buy, for example, a very expensive car and give twice as much as the car is worth into charity. We can't be a judge of anything. We shouldn't be judging anyone at all. But yeah, I mean, there comes a time when the people will start thinking about themselves and what they can buy and the enjoyment of this life. And so therefore, you know, the household, you know, the etiquette, you know, the ethics from the institutions that they go to needs to try and encourage to say that, look, don't look inwards, look outwards. look around you, see if there's anybody needy. And so, you know, it's something that needs to be encouraged and nurtured from a very young age, to look around you and to give, I believe, anyway. But
I've noticed, especially with Muslims generally, that it is something which is encouraged. I mean, my children are quite young, mashallah, and I see my daughter, who's 4 or 5, going in there and doing it and understanding that this is the right thing to do. And we're taught this. I mean, they're taught that just from the fact that we need to give zakah. It's something which is integral to the deen. And mashallah, something which I've noticed in most households, most Muslim households, children are fully aware of the fact that we're supposed to help our fellow man, mashallah, and it's not something which is, alhamdulillah, the nice thing about the deen is that the principle is that when you give, it doesn't actually decrease your wealth. So we can give freely with a free heart, mashallah. And okay, you may have a temporary reduction in what you have, but the fact remains that it will either, you know, that was never going to come to you in the first place. So alhamdulillah, we have this kind of certainty that you can give freely, and it's going to be something beneficial, mashallah.
Talking about that as well, you know, Jahanza, you mentioned something regarding your children, and in the schools, for example, I mean, children, they don't see race or colour or creed when it comes to, you see kids in the nursery, for example, they're really friendly, they give whatever they want to give and things like this. I mean, how could we instill something like that within the adults in our community? Because unfortunately, we're starting to see a lot of sectarianism and, you know, what can we do?
Actually, bro, I think we are doing some of the right things. Events like the Cordwell Drive, the Syria drives that we've done in the past as Deen Riders encourages adults to remember our faraid, you know, remember the things that we're supposed to be doing, mashallah, you know. Leading by example is a powerful way of influencing Muslims and non-Muslims alike. I think the more that we do, the more that we're going to have. I mean, for Syria, mashallah, you know, the blanket drive, we went from 0 to 23,000 in a day, which was phenomenal.
My next example actually is related to that Syria Ride Aid. So who's going to tell us a little bit, tell the audience a little bit about that? What happened? What was it about? And
the blanket appeal.
Yeah, the blanket appeal.
I'll go with that, inshallah, and then you can, anything that I forget, I'm sure Umar can chime in, mashallah. So it was done on a Christmas day. So instead of sitting around at home, what we decided to do, what the Deen Riders decided to do, was to ride from around London, inshallah, and we visited households who were able to raise approximately £300, and then, mashallah, 30 plus bikers would turn up, and we would collect the money, mashallah, and spend some time with the community.
Yeah, while we're speaking, Jahanza, we're going to show some pictures as well, inshallah.
Sure, mashallah. So, yeah, as you can, mashallah, you're looking good there, bro.
Mashallah. See, Ikra, we actually filmed this Ride Aid, so this is something we're going to show later on. And maybe I'll invite you both to come back and we can go through the actual, watch the video of it.
Absolutely, mashallah.
Mashallah. So yeah, carry on. So
yeah, and alhamdulillah, we were actually really surprised. A lot of the communities raised way more than £300. It wasn't so much about the money; it was the fact that when we turned up, we had. I mean, I remember the first ride we turned up, mashallah, just to collect some money, and it was a Muslim area, and the response we received actually was phenomenal. All the children came out, mashallah. I think this is in North London, and this is just after we've made the collection.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. And that household managed to raise over £1,000, the whole community, which was way more than we expected. So it's phenomenal, actually, meeting all the Muslims, having the children ride our bikes.
This is afterwards, this is another time, but I wanted to show a picture of you two here. We're in our planning meeting, both serious, mashallah.
Intention and focus there doesn't usually happen, that.
Yeah. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about that Ride Aid, and we will talk about it a little bit more, is that there was something quite profound that took place at that time, and it's something which I've seen happen time and time again when it comes to us as Deen Riders doing any type of fundraiser. And what that was is that on that particular campaign, maybe like it could have happened on 2 or 3 streets as far as I know, but definitely one, some of the donors who actually came out and waved us off and stuff like that were non-Muslim. And there was one street, for example, where I can't remember how much they raised. I don't know if it was £5,000. No, it wasn't 5,000. It was a few grand anyway, and that one street alone. And a lot of non-Muslims took part in the rewards of that. And
we had a few non-Muslim riders as well, didn't we?
We had some non-Muslim riders as well. Thank you very much for that. And also even on another Ride Aid that we did, the one for the homeless, Revert to Reality. And we had that beautiful picture. I'm sorry I didn't actually bring that picture today of that elderly couple who had donated. It wasn't a substantial amount, but it was a thought that counted. Like they knew what we were doing it for, and they said we're going to help.
MashaAllah.
But unfortunately, we're not seeing it the other way around. So maybe we're not giving such a good example. Yeah. We're not setting a good example. Let's actually move on to the next ride. You've mentioned Caldwell a couple of times, and probably no one knows what we're talking about. So what's happening next? Who wants to tell us about that one?
I think that's what you're going to take that one.
Caldwell. Okay, so there's a charity called Caldwell Children, and they are a charity that supports households who have disabled children. And that could be in the form of just general advice, support, manpower support. It could be equipment, funding, and so I think every sort of charity has grown out from identifying a problem, and it does cause a lot of stress on a household having someone who has a disability living amongst them.
Yeah, especially children.
Absolutely. So what we're doing is that we're just trying to raise awareness, and two, raise as much money as we can. As Muslims, we are responsible for our neighbours, we're responsible for our community, and we have people in our community who are suffering, be they homeless, be they disabled, blind, etc., etc. And we have a responsibility of people around us. So on this particular case, we are assisting this charity, and we would like the support of all the Muslims watching today, inshallah.
So going about in more detail with this ride, so as you mentioned, Caldwell Children, it's a charity which not very well known. They approached Deen Riders to ask to help with this particular campaign. This is something which I think is very significant. And I want the brothers and sisters at home to understand this, that it is not often you get something like this happen where, a mainstream charity will come to a Muslim organization of any kind and say, would you like to come and give us a hand? So this is why we do have to set a good example. We have to say, okay, yeah, because we want to do it. And we know that the community cares, we know the Ummah cares. Absolutely. But maybe, a few distractions, mind somewhere else, and, we lose wonderful opportunities. So Caldwell Children, we know that it's for disabled children. And so they have a couple of different projects. And one, for example, is to actually raise money for equipment, specialist equipment for the children. So maybe it could be like exercise wheelchairs, so children can get their daily exercises and things like this. The other things that they have, which you mentioned, was like the distress. They have something which is called a crisis fund, which is for when a family realizes for the first time that their child has a disability, and the first 6 weeks, I think it is the most critical time for them. So there are funds for that as well. And when they first came to us, actually, to Deen Riders, at that time, we were looking at it to say, okay, we want to help you. You're not a Muslim charity, you're not directly in our community in terms of regular contact, but we want to help. But then we started to realize, which I think was really significant, was that they said, oh, by the way, we have quite a few Muslim families that are beneficiaries of this charity. That came much later. Sure. And that's when it kind of really hit home that in helping others, you're actually also helping yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
SubhanAllah.
MashaAllah.
So that really kind of shocked me, and it made me want to do more to make sure that we can help. Not because, okay, we have our own interests now, but it just sets that, it just proves a point.
MashaAllah, it's just another opportunity to gain the good, isn't it? And your work is never lost, so wherever we can gain it, we should go for it. MashaAllah.
Hamza, just a quick question for you as a project manager. We're going to go to a break soon, but I've got my list of questions here for you, bro.
They look scary.
It's about a project manager. I wanted to ask you, how do you think you'd be able to develop the mindset of Muslims into understanding that non-Muslim charities are also our responsibility, Muslim causes?
It's actually a good question, and it's generally quite a difficult one. I would say, though, that giving to charity and being part of a charity or being focused in that manner goes beyond any type of career. So project management really is about achieving targets and goals and making sure that you're aligned to do that kind of stuff.
Which is why I asked you, because you're going to come from a different angle. You're going to come like, yeah.
I think as Umar has touched on previously, it starts with intention. So as long as you have that particular intention, what a project manager would do is ensure that he's he or she has aligned their resources to achieve that. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that small acts, regularly done, are far better than wild, random acts. MashaAllah. So I think really and truly, it starts off with the intention, and that is something which is cultivated, through our upbringing, through events like this, and then it's just a case of a Muslim looking at himself and making sure that they can, and they do the necessary tasks and execute the plan to make sure they can actually contribute.
But where would they start?
I think with so much need out there in the world, you can just pick something. It's fine. So for us, mashallah, we've started off with writing and then branched it off to whoever needs help. You can pretty much go, hey, I'm going to sponsor orphans, and decide I'm going to give such and such amount of money to the orphans, or I'm going to make sure that I help out the homeless. But personally, I would start with a sphere which is close to myself. So, if you can help your family, then move outwards. I think that's
more,
the sunnah. So.
More on that after the break, because we're going to take a break now, brothers and sisters. When we come back, we're going to ask a few more questions as well, which I know that you might be dying to ask. And therefore, the phone lines will be open, so pick the phones up and make sure you call in, inshallah. But until then, I think we will take a break, put the kettle on, cup of tea, 2 sugars, 2 sugars, 2 sugars. See you after the break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.